Hi, folks, and welcome to another Rio and Raw conversation. This time we will go through the concept of Palestinism, or the so-called Palestinian cause. It's something that people have embraced, and I would say not always conscious of what it is. So we need to throw some awareness for the flags that have been propagated all over the place. It's better to know what we embody. So the best way to have a clear understanding of what has been spread over the road is to have some experts. So I'm very pleased today to have Rafael Castro Martinez, who was with us last week. I also have Niram Ferretti, who was also with us last week on a couple of other occasions, and Erez Modai, who has been a frequent guest in this show. I also have the pleasure of having my co-host on this Wednesday, Marco Alexander. So that's what we are here for. So if you want to understand exactly what's the Palestinian cause or how much we have been Palestinized, stay around, because it's something that you should be aware. Because if you look around, this flag is basically everywhere. Like, they don't need a Palestine month. It's just has been the case for many months, if not years or decades. So let's try to unpack that. And let's make it interactive. So it's not just us talking. We would like you to drop your questions or your comments. If you want to challenge what we are saying, we are more than happy, because the five of us, we tend to question the narrative. So we are open for you guys to call us out if you think that we are saying something that it has to be verified. So that's what we are here for, and I hope you enjoy it. There are 3 buttons below that are of massive help for this content to be distributed. One is for you to subscribe. So if you haven't, to be a massive favor if you do it tonight. If you are satisfied with the level of content that we have delivered here on a weekly basis, the best way to express that satisfaction is to press the like button below. And if you know someone who is into this sort of conversations, no filters, straightforward, to be great if you can share on your WhatsApp groups, on your email, even on your face-to-face chats. I also want to mention that this podcast is sponsored by Travel Device. So we are having a partnership with this travel group for a few weeks now, and I know from others that you can start availing from a special discount, and all you need to do is to get the discount code that I put on the YouTube description. So if you reach out to Travel Device, send them an email, give them a call, and provide the code I've made available on the description, you can get a special code that will help our experts to tailor your trip according to your wishes and needs. And this is it for me. I will jump a bit later. For now, I would like Marco to tell us in additional detail what are we here for.
Thank you, Vitor. Thank you. Before I start, we should remember that Greta is on her way to save us all. So let's start on a happy note, at least. So this evening, we shall be examining the Palestinian cause and the wider impact of Palestinism on Western societies in general. It is a topic about which everyone has an opinion, but rarely one that is informed by the requisite knowledge. Yet it generates more uproar and rage than many other struggles in which the toll of victims is greatly surpassed. These gain scant attention and are given short shrift, never representing more than a blip on the collective radar of mainstream media, academia, and international institutions. Academia, which espouses skepticism and detachment in other matters, struggles to instill such values in students enthralled to chants of free Palestine. Indeed, These very chants are quite possibly the resonances of an echo chamber shaped by the predominant cultural climate. And interestingly, it is within such a climate that different and opposing views coalesce around Palestinism in their hostility towards Israel, but not only. Anyway, without further ado, let me start with Niram. Niram, they say that this conflict didn't start on the 7th of October. And to a certain extent, I must say I'm in agreement with these people. It didn't start on the 2nd of October. Give us your thoughts on that, please.
Well, it didn't start on the 7th of October. We need to understand what they mean by this, because if we listen to what Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, said on the 23rd of October, so not long after the 7th of October, he said that what happened didn't happen in a vacuum. And so he was giving reasons for it. He was just saying, okay, it's bad that something as ugly and atrocious as the 7th of October occurred, but at the same time, we need to understand the context. And this is a way to justify, of course, the 7th of October, meaning that we mustn't just take that piece of this fact, this terrible fact, this horrible fact, but we need to put it in a much wider context. And he added very clearly for us all to understand what he meant, that this happened in the context of 50, I'm quoting exactly his words, of 58 years of Palestinian occupation. I don't know why he said 58. Probably he meant one from 1967. But anyway, he said that 55 years of occupation. So it was very clear, his message. The 7th of October is the result of occupation. And this is a first piece, of course, of travesty, the travesty of history, of the travesty of, it's a big, big lie, because there is nothing like an occupation that has started from 1967. There was a war in 1967, the 6 Days War, of course, and it was a war of aggression. It was a war that was brought out by Arab states, led by Egypt, with an aim very clearly stated by Nasser to destroy Israel, to annihilate Israel. And of course, Israel had no intention of being annihilated, and won very, very easily, let's say, that war. It's lasted just 6 days. And as a consequence of that war, Israel entered in Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank, which was called by Jordan, and entered Gaza, and again in East Jerusalem. And it's very interesting to understand that apart from East Jerusalem, and this is a topic apart, Gaza and Judea and Samaria were assigned to Jews by the British Mandate of Palestine of 1923. So all territories west of the Jordan River were assigned by the British Mandate of Palestine to Jews, for them to live there, for them to build and flourish. But then in 1948, we had the war and the first aggression against Israel, again by Arabs, who again wanted to annihilate Israel. And so if we need and want, as Antonio Guterres teaches us, to put things in a context, and to understand history, we must, of course, widen a bit more the picture and not just look at 1967, when Israel won his second big war against the same enemies of 1948. And then, of course, we had 1973 and the first and the second Intifada, and then on the 7th of October, which is just one. It's just an episode, a genocidal. When we need to understand or use when we use words, we must be very careful and to understand the meaning of words. What Hamas tried to do on the 7th of October 223 was a full, large-scale genocide. And they were unable to accomplish this aim because they didn't have the power to do it.
Indeed,
They didn't have the power to do it. But if they could have, if they did have the power, if they were put in the position to have the power to do what they did on the 7th of October, they will indeed have carried that out completely in all of Israel. So we need to, when we need to understand context, we need to put the 7th of October in this wide context. And thanks to Antonio Guterres, who explains to us that the 7th of October didn't happen in a vacuum. No, indeed, it didn't happen in a vacuum. And this vacuum is very, very big. It started, if we want to go even forward, from 1948. It started in the 30s with in 1929, when there was a pogrom in a big pogrom in Hebron. It started. It's a long story. So, as I said, we need to thank Antonio Guterres because he gives us a lesson of history. But his lesson of history is very partial. It's
selective.
Very selective. Exactly.
It's very selective. Yes. No, I was just looking at the series of pogroms in the Mandate period, and we must remember the Nebi Musa riots, the Jaffa riots in 1921, the Hebron massacre, which you correctly mentioned, the Safed pogrom, which we mentioned before, and the general climate during the Arab Revolt. So yes, we should be grateful to Mr. Gutierrez for that. Erez, some thoughts of yours?
First of all, I'd like to point out that Mr. Gutierrez does his best to put things out of perspective, not into perspective. He references some ancient time, but he will not deal with the facts. And the facts are that most people who regard themselves as Palestinians came, or their ancestors came from regions around the land of Israel. When Jews started to pour into the country money, initiative, know-how, skills, and that created jobs. And the migration into Israel was basically labor migration, or let's call it welfare migration. People came to live better. And to the extent that over the 20s and half of the 30s, 1930s, the population doubled itself.
Indeed. Let me just give some numbers here, because Robert Kennedy, the senator who was assassinated, gave some figures in the order of 40,000 per year between the years 1932 to 1944. These were the numbers that were streaming into the country. And of course, we know that the British didn't exactly keep tabs on the numbers. Sorry, Erez, go on.
And the people that call themselves Palestinians actually came from surrounding regions. I don't want to say countries, because they weren't countries at the time. And what brought them in was the aspiration to live better medicine, better transportation, a better economy, etc., etc. And but they never, I don't want to say never, but until the late 30s, they didn't, at least most of them didn't see themselves as a separate nationhood. They regarded themselves as part of greater Syria, as it was during the Ottoman Empire time. They regarded themselves part of the greater Arab nation, which at that time had no borders. There wasn't a Jordan and a Syria and Iraq and Saudi Arabia. These were all concepts that didn't exist at the time.
Indeed.
Eventually, what happened in the mid-60s is that those people who lived in refugee camps because the Arab nations didn't want to take them in as citizens, those people started to define themselves as Palestinians, led and initiated by Yasser Arafat, who is, apart from being an arch terrorist, was Egyptian born.
Indeed.
He wasn't Palestinian. He was born, if I remember correctly, he was born in Cairo.
Indeed. As many of the migrants were from Egypt as well. That's very true what you say. Rafael?
Sorry, just one more point.
Sorry, go ahead.
Between 1948 and 1967, what's called the West Bank and the Gaza Strip were occupied by Jordan and Egypt respectively. None of them, it didn't occur to either of them that there is a Palestinian people to be recognized as a nation. And same would have happened in 1967 had Nasser achieved his goal to annihilate Israel and exterminate Israelis. There would not have been a Palestine. There would have been a carve out or a carving of the land of Israel between Syria, Jordan, and Egypt, like Poland was torn apart by the Molotov-Ribbentrop agreement.
Indeed. Rafael, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I'd like to say one remark about what Niram said and one about Erez. Regarding Niram's, I agree that the context needs to be broader and more, realistic. And I think it's very realistic to realize that what Hamas did on October 7th is just an extension of what the Muslim Arab armies started doing throughout the Middle East and North Africa from the 7th century onwards. Slaughtering infidels, destroying churches, oppressing Jews, and the fact that there are basically no Christians left in the whole region. That before Muhammad's armies stormed, were predominantly Christian and Jewish. Says a lot about what the fate of all non-Muslims is when jihadism is allowed to prosper, thanks to the work of UNRWA and of people like Gutierrez and people like Francesco Albanese. Regarding Erez, you mentioned correctly that before 1967, no one protested, the fact that Palestinians, so to say, were occupied in the West Bank or Gaza. In fact, if you look at the Charter of the PLO of 1964, there was actually not even a desire for the West Bank and Gaza to be part of an independent Palestine. So the whole Palestinian identity is just a reaction and the pursuit of the destruction of everything Jews have built in the last 150 years in the land of Israel.
May I also mention that I recently read that the biggest genocide ever that humanity experienced was the extermination of Hindus by Muslims when they spread eastward in Asia. Like tens of millions of people were slaughtered because they were not Muslim. So this is also something to keep in mind.
Yes, this is a recurrent theme. Real genocides are ignored, and fictitious genocides are trumpeted on a grand scale. Niram? No microphone, Niram.
You are muted, Niram.
Yeah, sorry. I would like to just to make some comments on add some notes on what Rafael was saying, and we need to understand this very clearly, that the Palestinians as a people were invented. They were just fabricated. They were carved out by people, and this is not derogatory. It's simply a matter of
statement of
fact.
fact.
Of course, exactly. I mean, when we talk about Palestinians, who are we talking about? We are talking about Jordanians. We are talking about Egyptians. We are talking about Syrians. We are talking about people coming from Saudi Arabia, people about Muslim coming also from Serbia. We are talking about Arabs mainly. So when people think nowadays that there is an ethnic group that we define as Palestinians, they talk about Gazawis as if Gazawi, the people who live in Gaza, are an ethnicity. They are not an ethnicity. People that live, it's like saying that people that live in New Jersey are New Jerseyans. They are not New Jerseyans, they are Americans. They are just American who, as a matter of fact, live in New Jersey. But no one will ever think of them as New Jerseyans and talk about the New Jersey identity. So the Palestinian identity was created in the 60s, around 1964, when the PLA charter was edited, as an entity which was to antagonize Israelis. And this is something that in an interview in 1977, Zahir Muhsin, I think was his
Zuhair Mohsin. Zuhair Mohsin,
exactly,
yeah.
Who was a member of the executive committee of the PLO. He stated this very clearly in an interview he gave to a Dutch newspaper, and he said there are no Palestinians. The Palestinian people do not exist. We come from Lebanon, we come from Syria, from Jordan. As I said before, this was just created in order to antagonize Zionism, to antagonize Israel. It's a political fiction. It's a political, ideological creation, which was very cleverly created in the Soviet Union. And this is something we need to be very clear about. It was created in the Soviet Union, and in order to give to Yasser Arafat, the status of a liberation leader, liberation of an oppressed people, following the wave of liberation of the liberation, the decolonization that had happened before, of course, the war in Algeria, etc., etc., etc. They had to create this status of a warrior, of someone who was to liberate this new people, Palestinian people, from the yoke of Jews, from the yoke of Zionists.
Indeed, Niram, he was one of quite a number of Arabs who stated quite clearly that there was no such thing as a Palestinian identity. In fact, it possessed just a functional existence, namely to destroy the Jewish presence in the land of Israel. Indeed, I have. The list stretches it's quite a long list. Erez, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I want to address or look at the culture perspective. To be a nation, it's not enough to declare you're a nation. And just recently we saw how the Syrian quote-unquote nation was torn to pieces, because there was no Syrian nation. It was just a line in the sand that the powers drew after the First World War, that basically defined the borders of Syria. Now that applies in the same way to the Palestinians. For example, there is no intermarriage between the people of Gaza and the people of the West Bank. They don't even speak the same dialect of Arabic. It's not a mere chance that Hamas took over Gaza. They took over because these are different people, and they don't have a culture of their own. They don't have a national ethos. The songs you will hear from the people who regard themselves as Palestinians are directed against Jews and celebrate eating the livers of Jews, of Israelis. That is their culture. There is nothing common between someone who lives in Nablus and someone who lives in Gaza City. There is nothing in common between someone whose great-grandfather came from Syria and another one whose great-grandfather came from as far away as the Sudan just to live better. So the Palestinian nation is lacking any national characteristic except for hating the Jews and playing victim for losing war after war to the Jews and the Jews not being annihilated.
Yes, no, but I think we have to bear in mind that in a sense, Palestinism is a proxy war against the Jews. I think we have to keep this very much to the fore, this concept. Rafael?
Yes, I would like to say a few things regarding what Erez and Niram commented before. The Palestinians, so to say, are not different in this regard from many other nations in the area. In traditional Middle Eastern culture, the nation state is a European implant. So it's an artificial construction that does not belong to the culture, to the identity, to the history. If you talk to an average person in East Jerusalem and ask them, what is your identity, they will consistently say, I am first a Muslim, then an Arab, and only in the third place, I am a Palestinian. And you would get similar answers in Jordan, in Egypt, in Syria, and so on. Regarding Palestinian identity, I would say that there is, a certain language, a religion, but the core of this identity, which only emerged in the wake of the achievements of Jews and of Zionism, is contrary and hostile and aimed at destroying, everything that Jews have achieved. It's a little bit like Pakistan, where there is no such thing as a Pakistani identity except Islam and hating India. That's the thing that keeps the different nations in Pakistan together. And Palestine is a mirror of that. The only thing that keeps people in Gaza and Jenin and whatnot together is the dream of destroying Israel. No matter if Israel is as big as it is now or 1 square kilometer in the desert.
Right, and the conflict is really not a national conflict. It's a religious conflict which centers around land, because as I mentioned before, the Islam believes that anywhere Muslims live for any period of time, be it 5 centuries or 5 days, becomes land consecrated to Islam. And theoretically, when the Ottomans ruled the whole region, it became a land sanctified to Islam, which is called waqf. Waqf is a sacred land. Now, the Arabs, except with the exceptions of Egypt, which is an ethnic group by itself, and Turkey, are non-ethnic, let's call it, countries. As I mentioned about Syria, as I mentioned about Jordan, who may be less than 30% Bedouin citizens, and all the rest is Palestinians. Iraq, which is somewhat Shiite, somewhat Sunni, somewhat Kurd, etc., etc. They don't, as Rafael said, this is a foreign construct in the Arab thought, which is centered around land. And since the Jews bought lands in Israel, which I think Gulyás neglects to mention, that the land of Israel was mostly bought, and sometimes more than once, because land which was bought by Jews, when the Jews wanted to settle it, someone came and said, no, it's my cousin who sold you that land. That land is mine. And this even furthers the concept of land as the main issue in the conflict, and not the nationality.
Vitor, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so not just in terms of genocide, but in terms of occupation, and adjusting a bit the angle here. Maybe people are not aware of that, but there is a country in the EU that is currently occupied by Turkey, and that's Cyprus. So this is not new. The fact that they go in, they settle, and they're not willing to coexist with others. So if I share, I just got this from Google, so this is a source that it's not, let's say, from the dark side of the narrative or anything like that. I'm just going to put here for people. So Google just told me in 1974, Turkey invaded Cyprus, resulting in the occupation of a significant portion of the island, approximately 36%, which remains under Turkish control to this day. This invasion was followed by the expulsion of a large number of Greek Cypriots from their homes in the occupied areas. And if I go below, which I'm not going to this time because it's not about this conflict, we can see that the situation is unresolved, meaning the Greek Cypriots, they still need to live with that enclave upstairs. There is a border which is looked after by the UN, but nothing has been done, even though since then, and this shows how much hypocrisy it is in the current political climate. So this shows. I was just saying. So Cyprus since then joined the EU. It's not NATO, but it has close ties to NATO, and we do nothing about it. So it seems to be that the West is being very passive when it comes to the Islam incursions towards Jews or Christians' territory. So it's no wonder that the likes of Guterres turns a blind eye to what's happening in Israel, or even distorts the facts. And of course, we need to bring this into public eye, because people go to Cyprus on holiday, enjoy being on the beach, but they don't know that on the northern part of the country, a portion of the territory was stolen, and we don't see protests on the street as we see for Palestine. It's just forgotten, which for me it's telling that there must be more to that than just an occupation. There must be foreign interests.
Right. In fact, that's very interesting that you mention that, because you use the word passive. I would go well beyond that. I think you exceed in charity. It's not just a matter of being passive; it is a matter of active agency, which I think people tend not to want to face the facts that European countries finance, teach in their schools, look the other way. They actively, nations, the state, European states and the European Union, they finance, they encourage, they defend a genocidal cause. And I think we have to state this quite clearly. And I don't think any state in Europe, except perhaps with the exception of some in Eastern Europe, can say that they don't do this. Niram.
The case that Victor pointed out of Turkey and Cyprus is, of course, overwhelming, and there are many other cases of occupied countries, and we have the United Nations, who are not only they are passive, they couldn't care less. There is obsession, completely total obsession about Israel, and which started very clearly from 1967 onwards. And from 1967 onwards, the United Nations started to push one against the other, against the state of Israel. And this is for a very clear reason, for a very political reason, because we have an overwhelming majority of Muslim states in the United Nations. And at the time, the Soviet Union was very powerful. And I think it's not enough stated, not enough explained how the Soviet Union was active.
Sorry, Niram, you're breaking up. Let's go on to
the
Rafael.
Most active agent of the slandering of Israel till today, because when we talk about apartheid, when we talk about colonialism, when we talk about genocide, when we talk about when the parallel between Nazism and Israel is made, all of this comes out of the Soviet Union.
Yes, certainly the Bolshevik textbook, the Bolshevik manual is certainly very evident in this. Rafael, sorry, you wanted to say something. I forgot to let you in.
Yes, I'd like to point out the difference between, the so-called occupation of Israel in Judea and Samaria and what Turkey has done, and what, for example, has been done to the Armenians in Turkey and in Armenia. Hundreds of thousands of Christians have been ethnically cleansed, expelled. Israel builds peaceful communities in Judea and Samaria. The neighboring Arab, Christian, Muslim communities can live in peace, can prosper in peace, side by side and coexist. They choose instead to attack, and that is why it is the Jewish communities and not the Arab neighboring communities that are surrounded by barbed wire. The same is true in Israel. We're even in the midst of a war, even though every Israeli citizen has access to a machine gun. It is the synagogues, not the mosques, that need armed protection. As far as land is concerned, yes, it's true, this is a conflict about land, but it is not any piece of land. It is the land of Jerusalem. And control of Jerusalem has a very powerful religious and symbolic significance, because according to the Islamic tradition, the fact that their prophet rose to the skies on top of where the Jewish temple once stood signifies the triumph of Islam over both Judaism and Christianity. So when the Christians, so when Christians and when Jews controlled this city, this is a tremendous humiliation, a tremendous disgrace for Islam. And since it cannot be that Islam is humiliated because it's perfect, and since the Muslim community is the best of communities, it can't be that the Yahud are like defeating them. Then Jews must have some sort of satanic force that makes them so redoubtable, and therefore, instead of reaching their natural conclusion, logical conclusion is to say, good grief, look what the Jews have achieved in this land, which was barren, which had no resources, in just 100 years. Let us do the same. Let us learn from them. The opposite happens. Everything that Jews do well, the other side hates. instead of freedom, democracy, women's rights, minority rights. All of these virtues are considered, Zionist contamination of, the healthy, holy culture. And, the countries that have understood that this is the wrong path, like, for example, Bahrain and United Arab Emirates, have realized that what they have achieved, thanks to enormous resources of oil and natural gas, Israel has achieved just with brains and hard work. The oil is running out in the Emirates, so they realize that in order to continue being relevant, they need to emulate Israel's achievements, and that's the origin of the Abraham Accords.
You say something very interesting about the Emirates and some of the, let's say, more moderate countries, although I urge caution when we use the word moderate. Nonetheless, there are voices in this world which are below the radar, put it that way, that do think of Israel and the Jews in different terms. They are aware of the biblical connection, and they are in a certain way undergoing a process of de-Palestinization, because Palestinism is the poison which has infected the Muslim mind in recent years. I just wanted to state that in fairness. There are Arabs who don't buy into the Palestinist narrative, and they are increasing slowly but surely. Unfortunately, these tend to be drowned out by the free Palestine crowd, which is problematic. And to a great extent, these voices are at their loudest in Europe. And we have to try to understand, and I think this is something I'd like to explore now. Why has Palestinism taken such a hold in Europe? I would like to open up this.
Let me tell you something. I was actually walking in Dublin city center today for personal reasons, and I spotted, I'd say a teenager, or maybe she was already in her early 20s, but she was young, and she had a football jersey of Palestine, and on the back it had the Israeli map, the whole Israeli map. So if this is not genocidal, I don't know what genocide is, because she is openly calling for the whole occupation of the land of Israel by Palestine. I don't know if she is aware of that or not, but the image doesn't leave any margin for doubt. Like that, that image is telling a lot. So, and I walked and I saw her maybe like 2-3 minutes, and I didn't see anyone staring at her like she's propagating hate or she is inciting violence. Everyone looked at it as it's something normal. And I'm pretty sure if I would wandering around with, let's say, a T-shirt with the Israeli map, not stating any political message, I probably will receive hostility. So I wonder, why is this that some can just proclaim that that land is theirs, even though there are no evidences, as we just stated, and others need to be extremely cautious when expressing, say, pride for their land.
Yes. No, you say something very important. I'd like to encapsulate it in a few words and pick it up from there. Why are people so receptive to this message? Who wants to take it up from there? Niram?
Yeah, well, very briefly. One of the reasons is that Palestinians, Arabs, Palestinians, as the underdog, as they are the underdog, the victims, and we know that the culture of victimization is very popular, of course. So when we have decades of teaching in American university, in Europe also, but not as large as in the United States, where all the studies of colonization have been popping up like mushrooms in the last 30 years. When students are taught that the West is the worst possible civilization that ever appeared on Earth, when they are taught that Arabs are absolutely good fellows. That everything, with the exception of the Western, was a sort of paradise, and the West just brought darkness and destruction. Well, Israel is part of this, of course, because it has been taught that Israel is a European Western endeavor, which it is to a larger extent, of course, but it is only seen in the shadow of evil, in the shadow of evil. And Arabs were just, the autonomous indigenous people of the land, which were subjugated by the colonizers, by the settlers, the terrible settlers that came from Europe and took away their land. So we have this narrative, which is a very, very strong narrative, which is a very Manichaean, black and white narrative, and that, of course, has nothing to do with real history, but has a lot to do with. And we know that propaganda, the main core of propaganda, the main strength of propaganda, take advantage of people's emotions. Adolf Hitler in the Mein Kampf wrote it very clearly. Propaganda must be created in order to reach the level of there must be at a very, very, very basic level. Very, very basic. We need to push very simple ideas, very basic ideas, in order for people to learn them easily, in order to feed people with very, very clear and simple ideas. And we will warm the hearts, first of all, and then we will win the minds. And this is exactly, I think, what has been going on with Palestinization in the last 40 years, 50 years.
Erez.
Two things. First of all, I would like to take exception to the land of Israel being unique to Islam because of Jerusalem. First of all, do you know how many times Jerusalem is mentioned in the Quran?
None.
The answer is not once. Not once. Not even in the story about Muhammad's horse.
Night journey.
Yeah, night journey to somewhere, to some wall, which they decided that should be the Western Wall or the Wall of Jerusalem. That's and you can see that Muslims are hell bent on the conquest of land in Cyprus, in chasing away the Armenians from Turkey, in taking over Spain in the Middle Ages, in reaching the gates of Vienna by the Turks, because they want to assert Islam. Why the Christians are willing to buy into that? I think that first of all, there is the willful ignorance. You buy into what you want to buy into. And this, as we mentioned before, is only the current retrovirus of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism was rampant in Europe, and after the Second World War, it became not politically correct. So it's embarrassing to say I hate Jews. But when you can shift the hate to the Jews that occupy the land of the poor Arabs by force and build an alternative narrative, you gladly buy into it. And that is what happens with the Europeans. Sometimes this phenomenon is more severe in more religious countries. I don't want to say Catholic, but yes, sometimes devout Catholics are more prone to take these positions, such as in Ireland, in France, in Spain, and in other places where the virus of anti-Semitism has now changed form.
Rafael?
Yes, I would like to point out something very interesting. During the last 60, 70 years, the most powerful agents of anti-Zionism and Jew hatred have been the Arabs. And now the opposite dynamics are taking place. With the exception of, the Arabs in the land of Israel, there's much more openness in the Arab world to accept that Israel is a de facto reality and to come to terms with it. Whereas it is rather Muslims who are insecure about their Muslim identity, be it Muslims in Europe and in America, be it Pakistanis, Muslims in India, in Indonesia and Malaysia, who are really so obsessed with Zionism and anti-Zionism. Palestinians in this regard are an exception, but they are also insecure because on one hand, when they live in Israel as citizens of Israel, they enjoy benefits and rights that no other Arab Muslim community enjoys in the world. Certainly not in the Middle East. And when they're in Judea and Samaria and Gaza, they're not, the strong, dominant force that rules and lords over everyone who's not Muslim. So they are also insecure about their Muslim identity. Muslim communities in Europe and in America also have the same issue. They're there because obviously the West grants them rights and material welfare that is unknown in most of the Muslim world. And that creates a crisis because if you realize that your whole life is better thanks to the rights that infidels grant you, you have to find a reason to feel superior, and the Palestinian cause grants them this indignation, this feeling that okay, I live here, but the society in which I live is so unjust because they support the horrible genocidal Zionists. So I can still be proud of the superiority of my culture because we Muslims are defending our poor brothers in Palestine.
Erez wanted to jump in.
Yes. Culture is something made of beliefs, of outlooks, and of values. Now, we've heard before that the extremists have a different set of values, and I want to take on that. We say that sometimes the Arabs, for example, in Israel, live much better than their brothers in any Arab country. But we should keep in mind that living better is not a significant consideration. If it were, the Hamas would not be stealing the humanitarian aid. They don't give a damn, for the lack of another word, about personal rights, about personal freedom. What's more important to them is the honor of Islam, of Arabs, which manifests itself by winning wars, by subjugating infidels. And therefore, it brings me back to the fact that the conflict around Palestinism is not around nationhood. It's about land, it's about religion, things that matter the most to Arabs and in particular Islamists. And therefore, the fact that someone lives better in Israel, and for example, Israeli Arabs are sometimes asked, can you mention or can you point out one thing that you're discriminated against, and they just can't. But it doesn't change the fact that Islam is more important. Back in 2000, in the year 2000, Israel had serious riots when hundreds of thousands of Muslims responded to the call that the mosque in Jerusalem is in jeopardy because the Jews want to exterminate it or to destroy it. This, to me, is a sign that the values that lead the Muslim and Arab world, with the exception of the UAE and perhaps other countries, is the values of asserting Islam, of honor, whether you earn it or extorted by violence and rape.
Niram?
Well, I completely, yes, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
I completely agree with what Erez said. It's very important to understand the concept of honor, the concept of land, and the concept of supremacism, which is very much at the core of the worldview, not only of Hamas, but also of Hezbollah and of Islam. This is the classical core view. It's certainly the prevalent.
I think you're correct in saying that it is the prevalent view. Unfortunately, it is the prevalent view,
yeah,
with some exceptions, that appear to be trying to break away from this pattern. I don't know how successful they are, but there are sort of
they won't be. Sorry, they won't be, because
there are some exceptions. But
sorry.
No, sorry. No. We just overlapped. But as you said, Marco, exceptions are exceptions. They are exceptions. So Islam is very strong in these core values, because these core values you find them in the Quran. You don't find them in another place. You find them in the Hadith. You find them in the Sirah, which is the biography of the Prophet Muhammad. So, and again, I would like to make a footnote to what Erez was saying before, when he was talking about the society and about the difference between people living in Gaza and people living in Hebron, etc. Very clearly, we are talking about, and there is nothing absolutely derogatory in what I'm saying. We are talking about tribes. We're talking about tribes. We're talking about clans. We're talking about families. The Emirates, what are the Emirates? They are family. What is this? Saudi Arabia is a whole the country. Qatar is a family. The Al Tahani family. The Al Saud family is the family which owns. When Sadat, I said this sometimes before in another of our meetings, when Sadat made a famous interview in Israel in 1978, and he said there's only one nation, one Arab nation. It is Egypt. And the interviewer asked him, and what are the others? They are tribes with flags. And this is the truth. There is nothing derogatory. So when we talk about the Palestinian people, this is a complete fiction. They are not the same people. We are not talking about the same people when we talk about people living in Gaza and people living in Hebron. Of course, they are Arabs, but they are very, very different in many ways of thinking and in their approach, in the language, in the dialect. So there is, we cannot stick upon them a concept of being a people. Because yes, we can talk about Arab people, and then that's right. That's the main, and we can talk about Islam as the core of their belonging to. And this is correct. It is fine. We can talk about the Jewish people, of course. Jews are Jews because they have tradition, values, a common history. We know there are big differences because between Ashkenazi and Sephardi. We know that there are differences, but there is a whole history. The Jews together, and there's a whole history that holds Arabs together, but there's nothing like Palestinian people.
It is. Go ahead.
I'd like to make two comments. First of all, about the exceptions. Now, the UAE is a very distinct exception to the hate to Israel and denial of the Israeli right to exist. Sadly, as opposed to Jewish right to exist, which is a difference to be discussed some other time. But the fact is that all Arab countries are governed by the forceful minority. And as they have no concept of human rights, of individual freedoms, I am not optimistic about Jordan suddenly turning to be an Israel supporting country, and that is despite the peace agreement that Israel has with Jordan. Now, the second comment I'd like to make is that when you talk about nationality, we need to consider things such as I mentioned before as culture. The Palestinian quote-unquote people have no anthem. Their flag is the flag of Jordan, which Arafat removed the star from. They have nothing in common except Islamist revolutionary education of children to hate Israel. So, as I said before, they have very little in common. And just one more point is that you can trace the origins of people through blood groups. It turns out that Jews from Poland and Jews from Iraq are more similar in blood groups than they are to the surrounding population, and that Palestinians are more similar in blood groups to Yemenites than to any other people in the region.
Vitor, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the Arabs who are, or Muslims who are an exception. And I think there is a reason why we don't hear from them. First is because they are outnumbered by the mob. The other thing is they pay a massive price for speaking their mind. So if you disagree with the Muslim conformity, you'll be beheaded. You'll be, if not, if you are lucky, you'll be persecuted, and your family, your friends. We also be in trouble just because you express an opinion that is not in line with the Muslim commandments. So it's no wonder that we don't see the so-called Muslim moderators first, as you said, Marco, because they are not a lot. And the second is because they are not entitled to speak their minds without being severely punished. So that's another thing, because often you hear from Westerns saying, yeah, it seems that all the Arabs are in synchrony with this free Palestine thing. They kind of believe that even terrorist groups are doing what they can. But it's not that everyone is in favor of that. They think twice before making some sort of opposition, because the repercussions are there, and it's not only for themselves; it's for their family and friends. And if it is not a form of fascism, I don't know what it is.
I would like to add one thing. Another important point is to remember that in a Muslim and Arab culture, it's extremely unacceptable to criticize members of your own family, of your own clan, of your own nation, of your own religion. So it's not like among Jews where, a Jew has no problem in front of a non-Jewish public criticizing, his own prime minister or his own leaders. A Muslim, even when your closest friend, will very rarely say anything critical of his own people, of his and even of fellow Muslims, let alone his relatives. And I want to add one thing: it would be beautiful if all the people who claim to be pro-Palestinian really were pro-Palestinian, because if they were, they would have criticized the slaughter of Palestinians in Syria, the apartheid they live in Lebanon, their the discrimination and disenfranchisement they suffer in Jordan, their mass expulsion from Kuwait, and the corruption and atrocities that Hamas and the Palestinian Authority have committed against their own citizens during decades. If they had done all this and then, had something to say against Israel now, I would respect them. But since they only open their mouth when they can blame Israel, it is obvious that they're not pro-Palestinian. They're first and foremost anti-Israel and de facto anti-Semitic. This conflict could be over in 4 days. It would be enough for Israelis tomorrow, Jewish Israelis, to wake up, to recite the Shahada and become Muslims. Then most of the Muslim world will become more Zionist than Itamar Ben-Gvir. The day after, Israel can do what it sees fit with the Arabs in the West Bank and Gaza. And when I mean do whatever it sees fit, I mean, act like Saddam Hussein or like any other Arab country, a Muslim country behaves with pesky people, and no one would bat an eyelid in the Muslim world. I don't even think Gutierrez would complain, because Gutierrez complains when he can criticize a Christian Jewish country, but when Muslim commit horrible crimes, it's considered cultural sensitivity to keep quiet and be diplomatic about the atrocities.
You make a very good point, actually. Sorry, Erez, just in passing. Palestinism per se isn't racist, but it is genocidal. The Nakba, to all intents, considerations, and purposes, was a failed genocide against the Jews. That is the great tragedy of the Nakba, a war which was expressly declared to eliminate the Jews. Not so much as a race, because if a Jew became a Palestinist, there's no issue there. In this, it is dissimilar from Nazism. From a qualitative point of view, however, it is worse in the sense that they boast about their actions, and we've seen in the 7th of October where they film themselves committing atrocities. Sorry, somebody wanted to come in.
I think there's a comment from a viewer, if you don't mind, Erez.
Okay.
I don't want to neglect our audience. I think it's good that we keep this interactive, and I will let Erez reply. So Wonder is saying, many historians say the Palestinian issue only becomes serious, whatever does that mean, after the 1970s. Why don't they tell us the true history about the country that changed Palestine's fate from the refugee to political rights? I see a lot of ambiguity in this comment, but Erez, up to you to comment.
Yes. First of all, Palestinians were kept as a problem by the Arab countries. They were actually weaponized against Israel, because when the state of Israel was established, many people from the regions that became Jordan and Syria and Saudi Arabia and particularly Egypt went back home, basically. But they weren't accepted as citizens, because this way they could be weaponized against the Jewish minority. I want to address the question of race. First of all, the Muslims, not only are they not a race themselves, they are composed of many ethnic groups. They also want to assert Islam over all races. So the question of race is irrelevant to Muslims. And another point I'd like to make is that many times.
Sorry if I interrupt your train of thought. There is an exception, however, empirically. Black Africans were seen distinctly as inferior from an empirical point of view. Even to this day, Black Africans in Gaza, people who are, they are viewed differently. But anyway, go ahead. Go ahead, Erez. Microphone.
Sorry, technical issues.
Yeah.
Maybe Niram, you can join. You can bring your thoughts into the conversation.
Go back.
No, Erez was talking.
Oh, please go ahead. Go ahead.
No, well, you were sorry. I interrupted you. I owe you an apology.
Yeah, it's over now.
Yeah. I'm saying that race is not such a big of an idea, and which brings me back to the value scale, in which Islam is paramount. They are not concerned so much about someone's race, with the exception that Marco raised. They are concerned with the fact that there are infidels in the world, and that that is to them a conflict and a damage to their honor and self-perception, because they are not the only religion in the world. So it's not so much a question of race as a question of religion, religion and honor.
Yes. Certainly, Islam, according to Islam, supersedes the other religions. Everything is subsumed into Islam. Indeed. Who wants to chip in? Rafael,
just before I pass to you, I think there is a comment from Juiko Jack, which is in somehow within the context of what Marco just said. So maybe Rafael can comment. He is stating that isn't it the same for Christianity and Jewish? Religion is not an ethnicity; it's a faith.
Okay, so let me just make a general remark, something positive about Islam. For example, in Christianity, when Jews converted or were forced to convert to Christianity, they were officially discriminated. In Spain, you have, the laws of blood purity. I have never heard that, Jewish converts to Islam suffered any kind of discrimination. Even now, there are Jews who converted to Islam, in Israel and the Arab villages, even in Hebron, and I haven't heard of any of them, being hurt for their Jewish roots. In that sense, Islam and Muslims are much more, embracing than the Christian world, where I have the impression that, religion plays a smaller role in the identity of individuals. So I don't think race plays any role in Islam as a religion, even though for historic reasons, you're right, Marco, that, it's better to be fair-skinned rather than black, because historically blacks came from Africa and, were descended from slaves. So they had a negative, sociological image and reputation. Christianity is also not an ethnicity, because it is not based on descendancy like Judaism. It is based on missionizing and converting people of all races. And Judaism could be seen as an ethnicity, because Jews see themselves as descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, even though when you go to Israel, you see as many different faces and races as you would see in New York. So it's also hard to say that Jews are, actually a race, as, anti-Semites said for too long.
Well, just a minor correction there. There is a shared genetic patrimony across the different groups: Sephardi, Mizrahi, and Ashkenazi. That's recent genetics have proven that. But anyway, somebody, as we all know, can convert to Judaism. So as opposed to Islam and Christianity, there is a strong ethnic element which cannot be denied.
And national.
And yes, certainly, a
national culture.
Indeed. Niram,
So I would like to just talk about something which I think is very important. It is very, unfortunately, it's very tragic, and has to do with the slogan "Free Palestine," because we have had two recent episodes, one which happened in Washington and one which more recently happened in Boulder in Colorado. Washington, of course, I'm talking about the killing of two Jews, a young couple, a young Israeli couple, at the Washington Museum by a man who shouted very clearly, "Free Palestine" twice before killing them. And after they were shot, he said, "I did it for Gaza." And the man who in Boulder a couple of days ago throwing Molotovs against a group of Jewish elders who gathered for an annual parade, and he shouted, "Free Palestine." So we need to understand this very clearly. All of us know this, but probably not all of the audience and all of the people, that by saying "Free Palestine," we are talking about a slogan which means which is genocidal in its intention, which means
its implications are
which means eradication of Jews, as Vitor was saying before about his encounter in Dublin with the girl who was wearing the sweatshirt with the flag, the Palestinian flag, if I recall well, and on the back of it, the map of Israel. And he said, and maybe he's right, and maybe she didn't even know what that meant. And it means very clearly that no Jews are meant to live in a land that, and I go back to what Erez said before, that is considered a waqf, which is the Arabic word for the eternal possession.
An endowment, a perpetual endowment,
Exactly. And why I'm going back to to this detail, because it's very clearly stated in the Charter of Hamas of 1988. Hamas in the Charter of 1988 talks about waqf and talks about jihad, and states very clearly that the aim is that of freeing Palestine. And when they talk about Palestine, they talk about all of the region. So
indeed.
when people, so we need to bring together these pieces in order to see the whole picture,
the big picture, yeah,
and to understand exactly what is the aim and what is at stake.
This was the stated aim of the armies that invaded Israel in 1948 anyway. They made declarations to this effect, which have been documented. So to a great extent, Palestinism in its modern form is a result of the failure to eradicate Israel with the use of conventional armies. It has been superseded to a great extent by this asymmetric war and this war on many fronts as well. Sorry, Erez, did you want to say something? I saw you chomping at a bit.
I want to address the national element. 20 minutes walk from the place I'm talking to you from, there are Israelite archaeological finds from the 8th century BC. And you find those Hebrew inscriptions, coins, and Jewish, I don't want to say artifacts, but yes, throughout Israel, including the Golan Heights and other places which are not in territorial state of Israel. Now, you can see the fake and the fraud of Palestinism by the way Palestinians try to imitate the rights that the Jewish people have over the land. They suddenly decided that they are descendants of the Canaanites, which were supposedly here during the times of the Jewish kingdoms.
No, excuse me, Erez, you're quite right in the thrust of what you're saying, but the Canaanites were a real element. This is the
Yes.
difference which we have to which we have to make between those who hold that they have a Palestinian identity. There's a clear distinction here, which I'm sorry, but the thrust of what you're saying is perfectly correct.
Right, and now the Palestinians try to claim that they are descendants of the Philistines, which disappeared as an ethnic group in the 7th century BC. Because the Jews had the Holocaust, they invented the Nakba as if they had a Holocaust of their own, as
That's
if
right.
they were exterminated by anyone, as if they suffered the atrocities that the Jews suffered. And another way they try to project themselves is by claiming that Jews are not a people, they are a religion. And this is where I have to take a strong exception to the comment brought before. As opposed to Christians, and I want to mention that there are French Christians, German Christians, Ethiopian Christians, etc., etc. The Jews are not only of one religion, they are a people with nationality. They speak the same language, some as a native tongue and some as a ceremonial and prayer. They hold the same holidays. They use the same expressions from Yemen to Alaska. And they have so much in common, which is exactly the cultural aspect that the Palestinians are missing, because they have nothing in common, because they are distinctive clans and don't have common heritage.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I would like to add one remark. You're right, Erez, about the ancient history, but it's important to highlight that this was an ancient history maintained consistently throughout the millennia. Every synagogue in the world, regardless whether it's in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, points towards Jerusalem, no matter if it was built 500 years ago or 800 years ago or yesterday. So the connection of the Jewish people to the land of Israel, to Jerusalem, that is Zion, has been constant during over 3,000 years.
While Muslims pray in the direction of Mecca.
Yeah, exactly. And as far as the Palestinism, we have to give them credit that they have been brilliant in harnessing, the best and most noblest and innocent instincts of the Western world to serve a cause that is very monstrous. Because when you have queers for Palestine, feminists for Palestine, people basically supporting, de facto helping Hamas in the name of human rights, you've realized they've managed to pull off the feat that the Nazis managed to pull off in the 20s and 30s of using liberal democracy and elections to destroy human rights, elections, and democracy. And I really feel sorry for the gays and feminists and their fate were Hamas to triumph.
Niram, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just very briefly to what Rafael has just said. They made an enormous accomplishment because they have been able to steal completely the language of human rights, and they have been able to make people, brainwash people up to the point, as Rafael was just making, up to the point that gays and people from the LGBT world uh, go around and shout also free, free Palestine. The same people that will not an hour if they will be discovered to be gays in Gaza, and the same people that are hanged in Tehran, who is the main sponsor of one of the main sponsor of Hamas. The other one is, of course, Qatar. So this makes you understand how much they have been completely brainwashed. The Nazism.
Excuse me, may I just say, I want to go beyond brainwashed, because I think we need to be talking about something else. I call it neuronicide, an incapacity to make the brain work.
But you're right. But you're right, because it's a collapse. You are completely right. I agree with you. This is a complete collapse of rationality. A complete collapse of rationality. It's not only brainwashing. It's like it's a complete, and it's an achievement much larger than what Nazism was able to make.
Oh, much better, much more effective.
Indeed, because Hitler was very clear about his aim of purifying the world of the Jewish peril, of the Jewish poison, and he was very clear about a master race. And so there were many people who were frightened about what he was saying. But no, they have been completely. They took over completely the human rights language, and make people feel better. Many useful idiots, when they shout "Free, free Palestine," they think. I'm talking about the people who are not in bad faith, because there are people who are not in bad faith who don't even know what they. They think they are. They think they are struggling for victims for this, these Palestinians who are victims of the evil.
Indeed.
Right. And let us remember that those who burn synagogues tonight will burn churches tomorrow. Those who want to free Palestine today will want to free Sevilla tomorrow, Palermo after the day after. And remember that all the Balkans, most of the Iberian Peninsula, all of southern Italy is just as Islamic according to Islamic law as Tel Aviv and Haifa. So it's only a matter of time for people in Spain and Italy to very dearly regret the sympathy they're offering to the Islamists.
They are already burning churches in Nigeria, in southern Egypt, in Ethiopia. They have the Taliban bombed in France, bombed the ancient statues of Buddha in Afghanistan. They are destroying treasures of history and culture because they can.
Indeed.
Okay, can we try to end on a happy note?
Yeah, go for it.
Please.
Go for it.
Okay.
Greta's on her way.
Can I tell a joke? Okay. There is a man who wants to buy a parrot in Bradford, so he goes to the pet shop, and he asks for a parrot. He sees one regularly looking, and the owner says, "This one costs £500." And the customer is terrified. Why £500? And the owner says, "Well, this parrot knows the whole Quran by heart." Okay, so he looks for another more affordable parrot. He sees another one, asks, "How much does this one cost?" And the shop owner says, "This one costs £1,000." And he's like, even more surprised. "Well, what does this parrot know?" This parrot knows not only the whole Quran, he also knows the 6 major collections of hadith. So in a corner, he sees an old ruffled parrot. He says, "Yeah, this one I can surely afford." So he asks the owner, "How much does this parrot cost?" The owner says, £5,000. And he's like, what else can he know in addition to the Quran and the Hadith? And Shabana answers, to be honest, I don't know. All I know is that the other parrots call him Mufti.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
Okay.
Good.
All the best. Thank you very much.
Are you off already? We need to.
We're live. Okay, sorry. I thought
we're live. We're not.
Live,
you
yeah.
you can't just leave us like that. I think we need to conclude with some basic.
And you might love. You might love the viewers. So you are.
Yeah.
You're having an impact.
I live in Germany, so I thought 1 hour 29 minutes we have to be punctual. Otherwise.
Right. Very good.
Well, we didn't start too punctual. So
yeah, but it could be the start of a new career anyway. That's.
Oh yes.
So I think we need to sort of sum up a few things that sort of underpin this very fictitious narrative. I think we have to sort of try to close on this so people get a better idea of what has been practiced upon them. For example, the name Palestine itself is an exonym. It's not something indigenous. It is imposed by colonial history. Truth be told, Palestine is a colonial term. A Palestinian nation never existed in history. We're talking about something that crystallized in the 1960s. I think it's also important to bear in mind the spiritual and ideological father of Palestinism, Haj Amin al-Husseini. Gentlemen, we must not forget this individual who was a Nazi collaborator who had actually planned a death camp in the Dotan Valley here in the land of Israel, and who is an inspiration for many modern-day Palestinians, namely Mahmoud Abbas and the gentleman who kicked off the PLO, namely Yasser Arafat. We have to sort of get these things together. Also, we have to mention the clandestine immigration that took place during the period of the British Mandate. I think many of the people who now live in Israel and Judea and Samaria are descendants of this immigration, an immigration that took place basically when the gates to British Mandate Palestine were shut to the Jews who had no place to escape to during and before the Holocaust. Anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I'd like to highlight that so many oppressed Muslims seek refuge in Israel, be it gays from Arab communities in Judea and Samaria or in Gaza, or even tens of thousands of Sudanese and Eritrean Muslims who get exploited, abused, killed in Egypt, and they seek refuge not in Saudi Arabia, not in Jordan, not in Palestinian Authority or Gaza, but in Israel. And Israel grants them, safety,
Asylum.
security, and human rights. Yes.
Still, sorry.
I mean, if you want to help, the Arabs and the Palestinians, the best thing you can do is help those who actually have a proven track record of doing what's good, giving them rights, giving them peace, giving them security. And that's certainly not helping the organizations that oppress them, abuse them, or who fund and support those who abuse and exploit them.
Erez, anything to add?
Yes, just the fact that in many instances, those people who flee tyranny in Muslim countries and murder and rape and genocide between clans still see the point in saying that they do not acknowledge the state of Israel and do not acknowledge its borders. So again, we come back to the fact that we can take the Islamism, we can take an Islamist and bring him from Sudan to Israel, but we cannot take Islamism out of him.
Interesting. Niram,
And this is like this is exactly a proof of how generous Israel is. I mean, it gives refuge to people who don't even recognize its right to exist. I mean, what other country is so stupid to do something like that?
Niram, go ahead.
Well, there's not really much I want to say about all to add, mainly to what has been just said right now. If not that, as I said at the beginning, we need to understand very clearly what Palestinism is. It's a political tool. It's a hammer against Israel. It's a hammer. It's a hammer against the West. It's a hammer against democracy. It's a hammer against our values. And it's a very useful tool that is not only used by, of course, progressives and fans of wokeism, but it's very skillfully used by agents, and I'm talking about nations who have values that are exactly opposite to those of the world of liberalism and of democracy. I'm talking about Russia, of course. I'm talking also about China, who has been flooding TikTok with anti-Israeli and pro-Palestinians videos, etc., etc. And I'm not talking about Muslim countries, because we know very clearly about this country. They are against the West, they're against Israel, but and China are less obvious, let's say so. So they are also playing a role skillfully, and because they see this as a way to undermine democracy and Western values.
I see the Palestinian cause as a Trojan horse to destroy Western civilization and to exploit its soft belly, which is anti-Semitism.
Absolutely, you said it. You said it very, very, very precisely, Rafael.
Good, Vitor.
I think I will just put an end to this conversation. I know we could be here for ages, but for the interest of time, I want to come to a closure. I want to thank our guests for their insights. As usual, they provided a lot of value. I hope they were eye-opener for the viewers, who I also owe my gratitude, because you guys have been dynamic. So you made this conversation a two-ways platform. So let's keep it that way, and make sure that you subscribe, that you know what we do in the future. We won't be here next Wednesday because I'll be in the land of Israel, but probably myself and Marco will set up something for Monday. And so if you are also satisfied with the content we have delivered today and in the past, the best way to express your pleasure is to award us a thumbs up. And if you know someone who haven't watched this, make sure to share, because this is here to stay. We know that we didn't solve this issue in 19 minutes. We just managed to shed some light into the conversation, and hopefully that can have repercussions going forward. So I want to thank each of you, including the viewers and those who drop comments and make this conversation interactive. We hope to see all of you on Monday, and I hope to see you, Marco and Erez, next week in Israel.
Absolutely. Looking forward.
Have a good trip, and lehaim.
Thanks. Toda rabba.
Thank you for having us.